Hey guys, this is my review of AEW All Out 2020. I had to check the name of the pay-per-view, their latest pay-per-view event, which took place this past weekend. So I'm going to give my general thoughts on the show. And I just want to say, first of all, then obviously you would have noticed by now this generally is like an old school wrestling channel, so most of my content will be older stuff, but I think once in a while I will keep up with newer stuff and do newer reviews, and I think this sort of felt like the perfect kind of opportunity, the perfect example of doing that. So I thought the latest AEW event, one way or the other, was worth covering. So I hope some of you enjoy my thoughts. Another thing to say is that I'm coming in pretty fresh with AEW. I've heard a lot of different things about it, a lot of mixed opinions on both ends about the promotion. And really, this is my first proper look at it. I'd seen like the odd match before, but this is my first like full show. So quite a good, I think, measuring stick maybe finally. So this was the first show, certainly pay-per-view at least, and they'd let any fans in to for a while. Obviously a limited amount of fans. It was held in Florida. And first of all, I have to say, no, that's just wrong. For starters, I have to criticise the promotion for that. We're still in the middle of this pandemic. In the States, as in the UK, the numbers are still high, and in some states they're growing, including in Florida. I'm pretty sure Florida's one of the worst hit states. So no, sorry, it's nonsense to let wrestling fans into a show at this point. Even though I understand it was a limited number and they were spaced out, they were wearing masks. Even so, to let wrestling fans into a show at the moment is no. I'm just not having that. So that's a black mark against the promotion for starters. The other thing to say, this was a very long show and over long really. The actual pay-per-view was close to 4 hours, and if you include obviously the pre-show, which was an hour, which I didn't watch or haven't watched yet, that's another hour. So you're talking close to 5 hours if you watch the pre-show. That's just way too long. It just dragged it out, and there was kind of like a video package before every match, which I thought was a bit overkill. I think 2.5 hours for your average AEW pay-per-view sounds about right to me, but let's get into the show properly. Obviously, the opening match was the bizarre match held in the dentist office. So you had Britt Baker. That's obviously her regular gimmick. She took on Swole, and this match was really an absolute joke. It just felt like the sort of match that I think you would see Vince Russo have in like the WCW dark days of 2000. It just felt like that sort of the way they would just open Nitro, and you would go into this like backstage type thing. And that looked bad enough, but the difference is obviously they had a lower budget, and they were going at it in this obviously the reception area, and then the dentist room, and then obviously a bit outside. And first of all, it just looks so low budget, and it looked like a really like sort of DIY sort of horror type production almost. And the offense just looked really lame at times. You know, they were obviously hitting each other with like diplomas off the wall, which is just so goofy. But yeah, it didn't even seem like full force. It just seemed kind of lame and weak. And if you're gonna do a hardcore match, if you're gonna say, well, these two girls like really hate each other, then kind of go the whole hog. But I think Jim Cornette made this point here. It was this weird in between sort of thing where on the one hand it was very goofy, but didn't really succeed in that. But on the other hand, they didn't really. It was this half-assed sort of thing where they were claiming, hey, these girls hate each other. It's a grudge match, but that they weren't really going for it. And I have to say, the Novocaine spot was the tops when Baker had Novocaine injected into her. I think it was a leg or something, so it was fell dead, and that was just stupid. And it's actually a shame because I actually think these two girls are good performers. I think you can see a lot of attitude from them. I think decent personality, and I do think in some ways the work rate was there. It was just such a stupid match, and it just looked so bad, and just some silly ass spots, and yeah, not for me, and a weird way to open a pay-per-view as well. It's not really this sort of semi-hardcore gimmick sort of match. Is not, you tend to think you go for a more fast-paced type match or maybe a technical type match, and it's not. A bit of a flat way to open the pay-per-view. And so I'd give the match about 1.5 stars really overall. Not very good. Next up we had the first tag match, Jurassic Express against the Young Bucks. I've seen the Bucks a few times on indie shows in the past, but it's been a while. I've not seen much of them. And I have to say, based on this match, they're pretty average at best. They're quite generic indie type team. There were some impressive moves in this match, but I think it did descend into a bit of a spot fest. And, I don't have as strong of feelings on the Bucks as some people, but I just thought they are pretty generic looking, and they're fine. They do some nice moves, and they're okay as workers. I just don't think they're amazing. I think the MVP of this match was definitely Jungle George. I thought, he was the one that stood out to me. I thought Luchasaurus. The weird thing about him in this match is they were treating him as like he was the big monster, and yet he's actually not that much bigger than the other wrestlers in the match, but they were obviously building him as like the sort of Kane of the match, and it was like, can the Bucks kind of overcome him? Can they topple him? And yeah, the finish I thought was pretty weak as well. BTE finisher just didn't look that good from the Bucks. So based on this match, they're overrated. I'm sorry. So I'll give. It wasn't a bad match. It was an okay match. Probably say around about 2 stars for this one. Then we have the Casino Battle Royal, 21 wrestlers, and the winner becomes the AEW, or becomes the number 1 contender for the AEW title and get a shot somewhere in the future. And I think what put me off about this match was that it's basically messing with the traditional Battle Royal format, because the Battle Royal is this sustainable sort of like format in wrestling. You can't really go wrong with it. It's such a timeless classic. And the format which we see every year at the Rumble or other Battle Royals, just stick to that. You don't need to mess about with it. But no, it sort of reminds me a bit of TNA, the way they would like overdo things with like gimmick matches, or in this they had to like sort of change up things, and it was basically that they had them. I mean, Casino is part of the crew, but they had them like obviously supposedly draw cards in the back before the match, and obviously that determined where they entered, but they just don't enter in ones, they enter in like groups, so you get a few, and it's just just too complicated, and it throws off the momentum of the match, because something obviously might be happening in the ring, potentially exciting, and then you get these group of wrestlers running in, and it just throws the whole thing off. And there's some good talent in there, but there's also some WWE or indie type castles that we've seen before. I mean, I do find it a bit hard to take this company seriously when they have someone like Billy Gunn out there, who was never like the most amazing talent, even in his WWE prime. And they do have a bunch of like either WWE or indie casts. Now Max Sydal comes out and he's the Joker, so again they have to really follow through on this card stuff, but he's the Joker card, and it's alright. So he makes his debut, and that's actually not a bad way to debut him, but unfortunately for Sydal, he then goofs a top rope move seconds into his debut, so he comes in like a house of fire. Obviously he's got the big sort of kind of the panache, if you like, because of getting the Joker card, but then he totally botches like a top rope move. I mean, it's not even a botch, he just literally slips off the top rope, and obviously that's not the intended thing, so it's like, oops, that was pretty bad. But yeah, it's a forgettable battle royal, and I think they should have just went with the traditional layout. In the end, last lunch, Archer, who's another ex WWE guy, he gets the win. Obviously, he's in Jake the Snake's stable, so that's something at least. I mean, I think Jake definitely adds something to the guys around him, and I did enjoy the spot with the body bag actually with one of Jake's other guys. So the body bag with the wrestler inside being thrown over the top rope, that was a cool spot. So I did like that. Next up, we have Sammy Cavara against Matt Hardy. It's a Broken Rules match, and Matt Hardy promised to leave AEW if he loses. Now, for a new promotion and stuff, and obviously a promotion trying to establish itself, is it really that big a deal if Matt Hardy has to leave? But credit to Matt Hardy, he sells it really well. His kind of demeanour and his passion during the match and before the match really sold it well. But this is just another very basic sort of backstage back and forth sort of kind of hardcore spot fest. And it doesn't last very long really until they think Matt Hardy is basically out, because he gets I think it was a spear like off the top of this big like stand and like into like a table, some sort of platform, and they think Matt's basically out. And then there's this long sort of break. You have a ref stoppage, and you think, oh God, really? But in the end, they sort of come away, and he wants to continue, and he keeps shouting like deletion, which is one of his big sort of catchphrases at the moment, like he's gonna delete Cavara, and it carries on. Overall, it's not a very long match in any case, so I don't think they really gave them that much time to do much. And in the end, Matt comes back and wins. He obviously he knocks Sammy off like a big stanchion onto another collapsed platform, And yeah, Matt gets the win, so obviously he stays in AEW. I give Matt credit at least for, I think, the way he sold this, and the commentators did a really good job as well. But bit of a nothing match. It again just felt like one of these, like, very generic, like, hardcore type matches. I'll give that one 2 stars as well. I think that's becoming the norm for this night. Next up, we do have a pretty big and significant match because it's the women's title, champion versus champion. So you had the AEW women's champion, which is Shida, against the NWA champion, women's champion, which is Thunder Rosa. And so we get a really nice video package coming into this. Some good comments from the likes of Billy Corgan, the NWA president, JR, Tony, the rest of them really talking about the history, hyping it up. So that was all good stuff. And I think this cross promotion thing with AEW and the NWA, it makes sense. It definitely makes sense for these two indie promotions. I know AEW sort of see themselves as more as an indie promotion, but it's a smart bit of business. I mean, I know the NWA aren't what they used to be, but they still have a bit of a brand name in wrestling at least. So I did like this, and I like the sort of real sports fit feel of the whole sort of build up and stuff. So it was all good stuff. I love Shida's entrance, that classic Japanese style entrance with the streamers, very sort of dramatic look to her. It was a really nice entrance. And I really like this match. I like the intensity of it at the beginning with them squaring off, and I think they both got good strong personalities. The match was treated very serious, which you needed. And I think maybe if I have a critique, I think Rosa at times was a bit too casual, a bit too I think, because she dominated a lot of the early part of the match, and I think maybe at that point she kind of got she was playing with her opponent a bit too much, which I know you can say kayfabe, she was getting too cocky, but I think it was more, it just came across like it was a bit too casual, if you see what I mean. It was too playful in such a serious sort of match. But anyway, they both put in good performances. There was some great stiff style blows, some great running knee lifts. Shida's head scissors early on looked really good. There was some great submission, holds back and forth. I think they told a good story. It was overall a realistic sort of a match. Some good strategy, like Rosa wrapping Shida around the ring post, working on the back. Some really hot sort of 2 counts. A nice kind of hoist up into a backbreaker from Shida. So I had Rosa up on the shoulders, drops her down into backbreaker. That looked really good. I really like the sort of double stomps from Shida as well. Flying clothesline from Rosa in the corner, I thought looked really good, really impactful. I think Shida did a great job of selling for her. So generally, I'm not going to say it was a perfect match or amazing, but up to this point it certainly stole the show. I think they both performed really well, and it was treated as a serious deal, and I think Shida's a really great talent. And yeah, she won with a flying knee strike, which did look really good actually. I think maybe you might say it felt a bit random, her winning like that after all the stuff, but anyway, really good match. Maybe not a masterpiece, but really good nonetheless. And they were given probably about the right amount of time. So I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars out of 5. So strong match, and obviously I think it makes sense that Shida went over and retained the AEW women's title. And then Joy, we've got a wedding segment to look forward to in future weeks. So we found out that Kip Sadell is getting married to Penelope in a future episode. They're going to announce he's going to announce his best men this week on Dynamite. Well, it'll have them flocking in to see that, I'll tell you. So the next match, anyway, was the Dark Order versus the Natural Nightmares. So one of the big rivalries at the moment, with Dustin Rhodes involved after the damage done to his brother Cody Rhodes. This match was again okay. I don't really have strong feelings on it. I think Uno in his gimp outfit, evil Uno in his gimp looked kind of ridiculous. There was some good performances. I think Colt Cabana is over the hill now. He looked pretty rough. But there were some sharp moves, some quite intense moves. I thought Matt Kiliani looked pretty good. But there were some botch spots. Dustin, I think, was effective in his little cameo. He wasn't really in the match a lot, but he was a pro. He sold like a pro. He got across the passion. Then to him, this was a grudge match, and he got his shots in and then got out the ring, which I think is probably the right way to go. But overall, it was a pretty forgettable match. And in the end, Cabana misses a moonsault, which was very telegraphed, and and then he was pinned, and Rhodes and his team get the win. 2 stars really. We found out afterwards Rhodes is going to get a title shot this coming week on Dynamite, so he was over the moon about that, which again he sold pretty well. Tag titles next, AEW tag titles. So we had Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page against the PTR. This is another one. It's very middling. I can't say it was terrible, but it sort of had a solid start. Some good technical wrestling. Some nice high-flying moves. And it started off quite slow, but I mean, even with that, I think they started packing the spots in quite early, and the match was way too long for what it was. I think they kind of peaked in the middle and never really recovered. Omega took a lot of the blows, took a lot of the offense, but I think at times he was quite cartoonish in the way he was selling and stuff, and it just felt like too much of a spot fest. And I think the problems is when they pack in all these near falls from big moves, it kind of makes those moves just look weak in a way, and just kind of just overdone really. Some of the double teams, it's like they have to add on a little bit rather than just keeping it quite simple, doing a flashy move and then getting out. It's almost like they have to add on a needless sort of bit just to make it that extra bit of flash. And not a great match overall. The champion, or new champion, PTR. They won with a spike pile driver, which is of course quite fitting because Tully Blanchard in their corner, so it's like reminiscent of the Brainbusters, although the Spike Pile Driver looked nowhere near as good as the Brainbusters. And some post-match dramatics from Kenny Omega. 2 stars for that one as well. Next up, Orange Cassidy against Chris Jericho. This long running through and feud, and this time the Massissa Mayhem match. Yeah. How the great have fallen. This was an absolute joke. This is definitely tied with the opening match for the worst match of the night. It's just an absolute joke. The gimmick of it was just so silly, considering this is meant to be a high-profile match on a pay-per-view. Jericho, for what it was, played his part, quite well. He was fine. He does look overweight. You can see he's getting quite old. But realistically, he should have beaten this guy in like 5 minutes at the most. He obviously dominates him, but Orange Cassidy just looks like a kind of a beach bum, kind of like one of these reality TV type stars, this shadow sort of figure. And he looks wimpy, and I understand that maybe is part of the point, although I'm not quite sure why they're pushing him as someone who the fans can get behind. If that's the case, that doesn't really make much sense. But I understand that obviously in wrestling you can get heat off that. But the problem is, as I said, he's in, one of the top matches on the card against a legend like Chris Jericho, and it's like he just looks out of his depth. You never really believe he can beat Jericho, even though he does. But it's, this back and forth for a long time. It's that sort of phony sort of thing where it looks like Jericho can knock him in pretty much at any time, and Cassidy keeps blocking, but at one point he smashes Jericho over the head with like a glass, like a pitcher of orange juice. So dumb, and that's how he basically escapes the walls of Jericho, the Lion Tamer. But yeah, there's a lot of dancing about, a lot of like stupid fake outs that you just don't buy. It looks pretty clear Jericho can get him in, and they just try and get drama out of them trying to get each other into the orange juice, and it's like, no drama, very flat, and in the end, unbelievable. Cassidy wins it. He knocks Jericho off the top rope into the orange juice, and well, I tell you what, that may have just killed Jericho's career. It's an absolute turkey of a match. 1.5 stars once again. I think, considering Jericho's involved and stuff, and how, the opening match was stupid as well, the gimmick. I think in some ways this is even dumber. In some ways, but I would probably say this is the worst match night, which leaves the AEW World Title match, Jon Moxley versus MJF. And it's another middling match. I think probably part of the problem with the match is it did look like a bit of, typical 2 indie guys. Not a lot of spark, not a lot of emotion to the match. It was a solid wrestling match. I thought they told quite a logical story. I quite like, Moxley selling the arm, but him trying to make slow comebacks, but kept favouring the arm sometimes. I think the slingshot on MJF and then him really bleeding a lot, because he was slingshot into the post, but that was overdone how much he was bleeding, and it seemed like desperate to really get heat on the match. I think I like Moxley more than MJF, who I just don't see a lot in MJF. Moxley a bit more out of the two. The match was alright. The match was kind of middling. I mean, probably one of the better on the card, but again, they sort of had to goof it up on the finish. The finish was absolutely dumb. It was then NJF was distracted by his dynamite diamond in the ring, and then Moxey hit him with like a double underhook suplex for the pin. And come on, you can do that in like a mid-card comedy match, but this was the world title main event. To have a finish like that is just a slap in the face, and an okay main event, but a weak finish and a weak end to the pay-per-view. And yeah, pretty awful pay-per-view overall. The women's title match, definitely the match of the night. There was a couple of other matches which were probably okay, but generally outside of the women's title, I think everything else ranged from mediocre to bad. And as I said, the opening match and certainly the Jericho match have to stand out as a couple of the worst matches you'll probably see all year. And I just want to say, overall, obviously I've been down on this show and on AEW based on this show, but I just want to say I'm not going to be one of these guys like Jim Cornette. I'm not going to go out there and like totally like slam people who like AEW, or I'm not going to be aggressive and kind of say how they're killing wrestling, or you people are part of the problem. At the end of the day, live and let live. If you like this stuff, then fair enough. That's your thing. That's your opinion. I'm just going to give my opinion on it. And my opinion on it is that this pay-per-view pretty much sucked. It was probably worth it for the women's title match, but not a lot else. So overall, I have to give a big thumbs down to AEW All Out. But if you disagree, let me know in the comments. What did you think of the show? What did you think of the overall thing, and what's happening at the moment in AEW? So, I think there is an interest here, so I will be covering more AEW in the future. But that's my thoughts on AEW All Out. Not a whole lot, I have to say. But yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more reviews in the future, more sort of special streams. I'm obviously doing specialized September themed streams at the moment, and my next one, which will be coming up this week, will be of the first ever WCW Monday Nitro, the debut Nitro, which took place in September '95. So that will be coming up actually tomorrow night on this channel, so look out for that. But yeah, I'm Keith, and I'll see you next time. Take care.